Let's dive right in. I want to talk a little bit about the recording of the song with Home Free. What was your initial reaction when they approached you to record this? Did you have any apprehensions?
I didn't even know what they were. I don't keep on top of anything that's going on. But my manager in Nashville had been working with them
Hmm.
on another project, and he suggested to them that they do American Pie, and then he uh, asked me if he thought that was a good idea, and I said, well, I don't really know because I don't really know what they do, and he sent me some things that they had done. And I said, well, they're good harmony singers. Well, I had no idea how successful they were because I'm not, I'm not a kid, and so they went ahead and made a track which was excellent, and they're the only musical group or organization that's ever done the entire song American Pie from the beginning to end. And so they asked me to participate, and I came in the studio and did some singing. I had a little difficulty the night before. We were out partying, and I had too many martinis, and my voice was a little shot, but I had to sing it a bunch of times until it woke up, because your voice has to wake up,
Yeah.
And, so got wide awake, and I started singing good, and did it, and then I heard the final version where each of the boys were doing a different verse,
Mhm.
and they were kind of trying to do what I did on the original, um, and so it's really cool because they did it in their own way, and the I never for a minute felt that there was something missing. It just
Yeah.
felt right.
I think it's nice because it seems like they've added a little bit to it.
Yeah, there's another whole version of the song now that's completely different that is worthy, and it's going to get played,
Yeah.
and every certainly get played all year long, and a lot on February 3rd.
Mhm. And you did a music video to go with it.
Yeah, they did everything
Mhm.
basically.
What was that like? The video, you were in the video as well, right?
What was it like? What is that again?
What was it like making the video? I'm.
Oh, I just they came out to the desert where I'm staying right now, and they brought a guy out with a camera, and I sang in front of a green screen, and then they superimposed me into the video.
Nice. Was this the first time that you have collaborated with anybody else on the recording of American Pie?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the recording of the original song itself, Don. Did you write it all in one go? Was it written in bits and pieces?
It was written over a period of 3 months when I was living in a little gatehouse in
Mhm.
Cold Spring, New York. And Cold Spring, New York is right across the Hudson River from the United States Military Academy. You take the Bear Mountain Bridge off of Palisades Parkway,
Mhm.
and I lived on a route on a road called. Later on, I lived on Old Manitou Road in Garrison, New York. But the song was written when I lived behind the town of Cold Spring in a tiny gatehouse,
Mhm.
and I was there because I was the only place I could afford, and I was involved with Pete Seeger and the Hudson River Sloop Singers,
Mhm.
and so I had a little house that I lived in, and I wrote some of the best songs I ever wrote.
Mhm.
I think primarily because my mind was sharper than it's ever been. I just finished 4 years of college. Um, I was in the middle of a very creative environment, and I was free.
Mhm.
I was finally free of all that Westchester, business bullshit, and I was just completely free, like let out of a cage.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've said sometimes in interviews, and this is no bad reflection on my family or anything, but I would have never come back. I just wanted to never come back. I wanted to, if it had been 1890 or something, I would have taken a train out west and I would have been on a ranch with horses and I'd have been a cowboy or I'd have been an outlaw or I'd been
Hmm.
something, but I would never have come back.
Hmm. But tell me, Don, when you said this was when you went to Columbia, right? I don't know how many people know, but you did go to Columbia. You got a scholarship to go to Columbia, right?
No, I did not go to Columbia. I got admitted
Ah, okay.
to to the master's program at Columbia University after I graduated from college. I did very well in school at that point, but before that, I never did well in school. I was awful. I
Mhm.
barely got out of high school. I was a summer school boy. Let me tell you, all the time. And then I went to college, and I started getting interested in some of the subject matter, which was, not something that I would even think that I would be interested in.
Yeah.
But I started studying economics, and I loved it. I loved philosophy. I loved finance. I loved the assurance of the odds and statistics that you can make money with money if
Yeah.
you know how to do it, and you really aren't going to get hurt. You just have to not do stupid things. Well, that's when I started learning that. I loved it. And therefore, I did well, and I did well on the test and found, wow, I could actually go to Columbia. Well, I'm not going to go. I'm going to sing with Pete Seeger. He went to Harvard, so what do you think about
Oh wow. Okay.
that?
What was the influence Pete had on you, Don?
Seeger?
Yeah.
Oh, he was probably the most important person that I ever knew, and certainly the most important person that ever let me get as close as I got. I mean, when you think about what a beautiful guy he had been betrayed by everyone. And yet, he had been writing me since I was in junior high school. I was writing him and asking him questions,
Hmm.
and he would answer my questions. It took him 6 months to get back to me because he was always busy, but he'd get back to me. One day I'd come and there would be a letter from Pete Seeger, and I was loved reading him what he had to say. And I ended up at his house and ended up knowing him. He liked me a lot. We were very similar. We both loved the outdoors. We both loved the woods, and I didn't want to be anywhere near a city, and he didn't either. So I was his kind of guy, and he supported me, and he brought me around to his shows and had me as a guest on his programs, introduced me to his audience, and helped me in every way he could possibly do. I had to move away from him because of the anti-American sentiment got too intense for me. I am not one of those people that thinks America is responsible for everything that's wrong in the world. I think that America is a great country and we do great things and we are a big mess most of the time, but a lot of great stuff happens here. So, and furthermore, he would never criticize a communist country, and no communist country, whether it was China, Russia, Vietnam, would ever let him operate for 5 minutes. And I told him so.
Hmm.
I said, if you went around singing these songs in Vietnam right now, you'd be in jail.
Yeah.
And the same in Russia and everywhere else. But he never talked about Tiananmen Square. He never talked about the rock and roll group, those girls that criticized Putin and they put him in jail. He never talked about the poet in Vietnam they put in jail who criticized this stuff. So I thought, this is something not right here, and so I moved off.
Hmm. But was Pete? Did Pete help you deal with all the success that came your way after American Pie became such a big
Oh
hit?
yeah, well yes, because you know, I carry a lot of him with me, in
Hmm.
terms of how I see things, and I don't think he liked political correctness, by the way. He liked ideas. He didn't care if your idea was crazy or was obnoxious to him. He'd be happy to discuss it with you. There's a sense now that if an idea is not the one that is approved, that it's just not open to discussion.
Yeah,
And that's fascist to me.
absolutely. Yeah,
So there you go. So I have a problem with all of what's going on. The right wing is fascist, and the left wing is politically correct, and that's fascist.
yeah,
So you have to have compromise. You have to have honest debate about every subject, no matter what it is.
yeah. Which I think we're not capable, at least in this era of social media and people getting trolled for their
Yeah.
views. I don't think it's possible to have a balanced, or at least a healthy discussion or a debate about anything.
Well, and when you can't say something, when Roseanne Barr makes a tweet that's obnoxious, she's obnoxious anyway, and her whole career is ruined from one tweet. When you have a guy like Chris Matthews, who was 20 years on TV with Hardball, and the most he ever did was compliment a woman or say "I love you" or whatever that, or be a little flirty, and all of a sudden they take him by the ear and throw him out in the street. I mean, that's a kind of Russia, really, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
you know, no evidence, no proof, no trial, no nothing, no respect after 20 years. He was a great guy, a great person on television, told it like it was.
yeah,
Um, and the big thing is, the division in America is exacerbated by the fact that we have two stations, CNN and MSNBC, that are completely for the Democratic nominee no matter what and hate the Republicans. And then you've got Fox and maybe another one coming up now that are completely for the right wing. That's going to divide people. In the
yeah,
old days, we used to have equal time. You would go on CBS, and if Nixon went on, then Kennedy went on. And they had their opposing points of view, and it was civilized. But the way that the media is set up in the United States is causing the division in the United States.
it's the same problem, Don. We have the same problem in India.
Oh,
Um,
is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
Just
good.
turn on the news and you'll see what's going on in India about the farmers' protests, and uh, you just like you said, you can't call it like you see it, and that's a big problem. Um,
It's
yeah,
not a big problem. It's the only problem because it's not democratic if you can't call. What are you
absolutely.
talking? What are you talking about? Free speech? That's not true.
Yeah, yeah. Like I was reading somewhere, someone said, there might be freedom of speech, but there's no freedom after speech. So, uh,
Well, there's freedom for a certain individual rapper to put out a song called WAP, and you don't even want to say what the three letters mean. That's freedom of speech. Of course, if it's filthy and it's low down, I can wear a T-shirt with "fuck you" on it, but I can't say something that I don't like about this movement or that movement or whatever, and God
yeah,
forbid you make fun of anybody. Oh my God, the humor has gone out of everything. Nobody,
yeah.
everybody
I
takes
agree.
themselves so seriously, and everybody's so easily offended.
Offended. I agree with you. Yeah,
You can say anything you want to me. I don't care what you say to me, and I'll have fun talking with you about it.
yeah. I want to ask you, Don, what was it like the first time you played American Pie live? Did it sound like it did in the studio? What was the
No.
audience reaction to it like?
No, the audience reaction was not anything much. It's a long song, and I played it. I played it in a couple of places. I think now that think back, and I played it in a big professional way, and on a show I did at Temple University with Laura Nero. But I think I probably played it at one of the little folk festivals that the Sloop put on, also, and maybe at the Cafe Lena. They were more interested in the song. But the thing that made the song was the record.
Yeah,
And Ed Freeman and I made the record. And we had the right engineer, the right studio, the right musicians. So much goes into making that next step. And that's why a George Martin is so important, who can take the work of a wonderful creative group like the Beatles and and make it into these masterpiece recordings. The producer, we just had Phil Spector pass away, and you listen to "Be My Baby," and you got to listen to that song once a day.
Yeah,
You got to listen to it once a day because it's so beautiful,
it
and
is.
the Ronettes are so beautiful. They're such great girls, and Ronnie Spector is so full of happiness when she sings the song. She's just like she was a girl from Spanish Harlem, and all of a sudden, she and her sister and her cousin, they're flying high, with this wonderful experience. That's the thing about the magic of the music business.
Absolutely. Tell me, Don, has the way you perform the song has it changed over the years?
Not really. No, I try to sing the songs properly, so that you can recognize. I try to sing them the way I sang them, for the sake of the fact that at that point I don't think I could have improved them. I mean, you can mess the song up. The problem with a lot of performers, and when they do a lot of singing, they start to phone it in, and they start to jazz it up, and they start to screw around with it because they're bored. And the one thing that I always told myself from the very beginning is that I am there to deliver the best performance I can for that audience. And that means I sing that song as if it was the first time I ever sang it. And the same for all of my other songs.
Yeah.
I don't throw things away as, oh, you want to hear that again, that kind of thing. Even if I never have that feeling, actually. I was delighted that people would want to hear me at all.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think that's what happened with Elvis, right? Towards the latter half of his career, um, I don't think he respected those songs the same way.
I don't think he respected himself. I think Elvis
True.
Presley got away with murder. He could do just about anything he wanted, and those people adored him. He didn't have any moment where he got pulled up short, until you ain't gonna do that, never. He just was the biggest spoiled man that ever lived, and as a result, but hilarious and very obviously endlessly fascinating because like I would talk to Gordon Stoker about Elvis Presley every year because we made Crying and Since I Don't Have You,
Yeah.
Castles in the Air. We did 2 albums with the Jordanaires, and they became very good friends of mine. I did a TV special with them in England, and I did Carnegie Hall three times for Christmas, Thanksgiving, one of those times. So um, they were cutting Blue Christmas,
Yeah.
and Elvis would be there. He was always like that, just completely, random, and he would say, "I'll have a blue Christmas." He would say it like that. And say, "Start again." Okay, and then he'd do it right. "I'll have a blue Christmas without you. And all right, everything's going great with that Christmas of white, but I'll have a blue Christmas." To start over. So then finally, bang! He'd get serious for 3 minutes,
Hmm.
and it's a masterpiece. But so you're
Amazing.
right on the edge all the time, not knowing, because he's not one of those guys that came in, "Oh, I'm all prepared, ready to
Yeah,
do it."
yeah, yeah.
He'd hang around and kid around for 4 hours and then say, "Let's make some music," And he was
Amazing.
right, because he knew how to get to that magic moment.
Yeah. Tell me, the first time you played American Pie, did you remember all the lyrics?
Did what?
Did you remember all the lyrics to the song the first time you sang American Pie?
Yes, yeah. My,
Oh,
my
yeah.
mind is my mind is good. I remember all my lyrics. I don't need any prompters on the stage or anything. I'm always learning new songs, and yeah, I know all my
Yeah.
songs. I know 10,000 songs
Wow.
at least, and I could record. I could take any song and give me half an hour with it, and I could go in the studio and cut a record.
Amazing. Amazing.
Easy.
Tell me, Don, American Pie, there's a certain timelessness to the song, right? Even in India, it's played all the time. We still play it in India. What do you think? Two questions. Do you think it's possible to write essentially what is a timeless song in today's era of music streaming and things like that? Because there's just so much music that comes out, right?
I think that there is a lack of concentration.
Mhm.
I think when you have too many disparate radio and TV stations and then constant um, fragments everywhere, nothing is concentrated. You have to have concentration in order to write, and you have to have concentration in order to appreciate what is written. Everything now is designed to distract you, and the government loves it, because they're all distracted and they get away with murder.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on with the CIA or the environment or the darker parts of the government. Yeah, everybody's totally distracted, and you can't watch a TV show all the way through. You sit and go from channel to channel all night long. That's what you do. Or you go on your phone from one Google story to the next,
Yeah.
or maybe you go in an area or whatever. I've been using the phone to learn to cook, so I put a lot of recipes on my phone, and then when I feel like it, I go in the kitchen and call one up and try to do it. So it's positive in that sense, but in the larger sense, all of this, it's it's um, it's way too much, like Elvis's song, too much, um, and too much is too much,
Hmm.
and the psychological effects on people is that they can't concentrate.
But
If you can't concentrate,
what is it about American Pie you think that stood the test of time? Is it the lyrics? Is it the production? Or is it just there is a certain cultural affection to the song? Is it that?
the song was a phenomenon the moment it came out.
Mhm.
It's always been what it is. It is a phenomenon, and American Pie is Don McLean. So in a sense, I was a phenomenon represented by that song. It's like everybody knows where you were when you first heard that song. Just like you remember where you were when you first heard Heartbreak Hotel, or you first heard the Beatles, or whatever. Um, so it's a phenomenon, and there are these things, and that's what you go for in the music business. You're looking for magic. You can't be earthbound. Trying to find magic. And American Pie is a biographical song. My story is woven
Yeah.
in there. I'm observing all these things. So, um, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I never wanted to be an Elvis Presley or a Paul McCartney or a John Lennon. I didn't want that kind of a fame because I didn't want people following me around and recognizing me everywhere and I can't go anyplace. I've had the best life you could ever imagine because I've done 20, 22 tours of the world, maybe world tours. I've done maybe 7,000 one nighters. I've met people, I've observed things, I've collected thoughts and memories and ideas, and I haven't been harassed by my own fame. Until now, I've stayed out of the public eye a
Hmm.
lot. In the
Hmm.
last few years, the internet and this YouTube channel and everything, I'm coming more and more into focus. But I'm old now, so I might go around the world one more time, and then that'll be that.
But do you like it now? Do you with all the technology and the social media and um, are you kind of able to embrace that?
Well, I've had fun with it because I've been able to put things on the YouTube channel. First of all, let me explain some things. Um, I've been able to put 11 albums and 173 tracks on this that I have accumulated that have come back to me. They're albums that I own because I own everything that I've ever done. All my albums, I own all my publishing, all my songs. And the early albums that Capitol has and that United Artists have, I control those. So they
Okay.
can't do anything without my permission. So I had these things, TV specials, concert videos accumulating, and now I can put them all out on this site. So it's, for me, it is a bonanza. And
Fabulous.
then I can teach people how to play guitar like I do. I've done a video about that, a couple of them. I can teach them how I played the five-string banjo and did certain songs and so
Hmm.
on. I'm going to have a one little video, it's already done, about how I play American Pie on the guitar. When I
Fabulous.
perform, here's how I do this.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of things, and I'm explaining everything I do. And I've talked, so this kind of thing. So, in order to give some of this information to young people who want to play guitar and write
Hmm.
songs, I'm convinced that someday, um, because I've written this song and because I am becoming the more famous as time goes by and the song becoming bigger and so on, that years from now, after I'm not around anymore, there will be historians who will probably go over every interview I ever did. They'll
Absolutely.
transcribe every single thing I ever said. And so I'm very careful about what I say
Hmm.
in these interviews. And if I go off and talk about something that's going on, I don't like to shoot from the hip. I like to say what I believe I know.
Absolutely. Tell me, does it frustrate you when people still try to kind of decode what the meaning of the song itself?
No, that's part of the entertaining aspects of the song, but I don't get into that. And I think it does, nothing frustrates me. I got to tell you, I'm not
Hmm.
frustrated by anything. I'm delighted by everything. It's all wonderful. I never thought, the day I went down to, I was called down to have my physical for the Army in 1969. If I'd been taken that day, none of this would have ever happened.
Yeah.
And that day was the day I was the only person that came back on that bus. Everybody else on that bus with me went into Vietnam. They went into the war. And I came home because I had asthma all those years. And then you have all the stuff that's happened in
Yeah.
my life and
Yeah.
all the influence that this music has had on other people's lives.
Yeah.
And think about all the lives that were lost and stupidly in that war, and all the children they would have made, and all the things they would have done, and all the wonderful stuff they would have done for people, and nothing ever happened. And they always choose the healthiest and the best to throw into the machine and kill them.
Yeah. You wrote a song about it called "The Grave," which George Michael
Correct.
famously covered, and George Michael even spoke about the impact that song had on him as a 7-year-old. And I think I remember reading something that you had said. I think it went, "We must remember that the wizard is really a cowardly old man hiding behind a curtain with a loud microphone. It takes courage and a
Right.
song to pull the curtain open and expose him."
And he did it,
Yeah.
and I loved him for it. And I thought he sang that song so much better than I ever could. I
Hmm.
was impressed. I thought it was beautiful. He brought out the melody. I have a symphonic way of writing that's natural to me. I hear things that way.
Hmm.
And, he just sang it beautifully, dramatically, and he had the string section. I watched him. He's the only artist that stood up to that damn George Bush, and
Yeah.
all his thugs. Oh, the only one. And it was my song that he used.
It was a beautiful
And
cover. Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't be prouder, I'll tell you. I couldn't be more impressed with him.
Yeah. Are there any other versions of American Pie that have stood out for you? There's been a lot of people have done covers. There's been some parodies. I think Madonna did a version, right?
There've been a lot of parodies,
Yeah.
and there's been the Madonna version, which um, produced probably one of the most famous videos that she ever did, and and also gave the song an enormous shot in the arm. I mean, all of a sudden it became the song of the 20th century, probably in partly because of her. And I don't think she ever sang another writer's song in her life. She always writes songs with other writers or writes them herself and makes her videos. She's a huge, important person. in the culture of the world, and she gets more abuse. You know, I'm not a big fan of people who say that women are abused all the time or women get a short end of the stick or whatever. But if she's an example that she gets abused more than anybody I've ever seen for doing good work.
Yeah.
So it's almost like there is an anti feminine component out there because they resent her always hitting the mark and scoring. You know,
Yeah.
they don't like it. I think because she's a woman. I mean that.
Hmm. There was another song you wrote on your first album called I think it was called "And I Love You So," that Perry
Yes.
Como covered. Can you tell us a little bit about that song?
Well, that song is older than American Pie. That was written in
Yeah.
1968 when I was now still in college. I think I wrote that song maybe. And I was always trying to write different kinds of songs, and I wanted to write one that was like the old-fashioned popular songs that I used to hear on the radio back in the 50s when I was a little boy in when I lived in Larchmont Woods. And I came up with this, and it was, you know, instantly the folk people that I knew hated it. You know, it was not folk music, and suddenly I started hating them because something happened to me, and I realized you are a bunch of closed-minded twits, and I just backed away from that whole folk thing
Hmm.
almost before I got started. Even when I was hanging out with Pete, Pete was an open-minded guy. He loved my music, all the things I did. But the folk people, the people that ran the festivals and these little precious little bullshit, you know, festivals where these singers who could only play three fucking chords, you know, and couldn't sing worth a damn, you know, and they thought they would look down their nose at this and that. Oh man, I hated that. I did, and they killed themselves. You know, they ended up being so um, prejudiced against everything
Hmm.
that they ended up disappearing really even as a category. You know, I suppose Ed Sheeran might be called folk, I suppose, because he's by himself and plays the guitar, but he writes all his own songs.
Hmm.
He writes songs that are, you know, everyone loves them. They're all over the place. They're not folk songs. So, you know, just because a person uses a guitar, but this is a particular type of individual. And they're like blues purists. Like I love Josh White. Josh
Yeah.
White was when he was 7 years old. Josh White had no education. Josh White suffered and struggled, and he bettered himself. He learned how to speak properly. He learned how to make these glorious arrangements on the guitar of all these songs. He continued to protest um, racism back from starting in the 1930s, and yet blues purists will fault him for improving himself.
Yeah.
They only want to hear the blues guys that sound like they're on the back of the tomato truck. That's what they want.
Yeah.
But a guy who had the same background, who decided to improve himself and learn how to speak properly
Yeah.
and became the darling of society in New York City in the 1940s, he gets shunted aside because he improved himself. Now, what
Hmm.
is that all about?
Yeah. Yeah. You also put out Don two albums called I think it is called Playing Favorites and Still Playing Favorites, right?
Yeah.
How do you decide what songs you'd like to cover?
Oh, I could have done five different albums. You know,
Hmm.
I didn't have to do those. I just felt like it in the studio. We just did one thing after another. I say, okay, let's try this one,
Hmm.
and and you know, I made um, botanical gardens
Hmm.
at the same time. So I cut those songs, and those were all my songs. And then I cut 20 or 30 more songs just for fun. And they became, you know, there's a bunch left over we didn't put out.
But tell me, these are songs that you relate to at some level, right? And that's the only reason you cover them.
Absolutely. Oh no, absolutely. I don't just sing something for no reason.
Hmm.
Those are all songs that had a certain thing, and yes, every one of them.
Hmm.
Um, and they're diverse. There's, Dylan's song, most
Yeah.
likely you go your way and I'll go mine. There's Tell Old Bill. There's a beautiful. I love the way the song "She Used to Love Me a Lot" turned out,
Hmm.
and that was live. That just happened live. Me with the band singing,
Yeah.
and then there's Greenback Dollar that is really an anthem for a guy like me. I just need a good song and a good guitar. That's all my life has been,
Hmm.
you know. And a bunch of others. I love "I Ain't Never," which
Yeah.
I think that's such a fun song, and we created a nice arrangement for it where it drops out in the middle.
Yeah.
Um,
The great albums. Yeah. Yeah.
so uh,
When was the first? Sorry. When was the first time you saw Dylan? Though there was a Dylan song on that. Right?
when's the first time I did what?
You saw Bob Dylan.
I saw Bob Dylan in 1962 at Carnegie Hall at a thing called the Hootenanny at Carnegie Hall.
Hmm.
And Pete Seeger had been organizing these things since the 1940s. And he would have all kinds of. Pete was a gravitational field. He Songs gravitated to him. Writers wrote songs because they were inspired by him. He was the embodiment of an ideal, and artists gravitated toward him. So he always had the new young singer, whether it was Phil Oakes or Tom Paxton or whatever. And of course, Dylan came down the road, and I saw him with his check shirt and his hat and his Gibson guitar, and he came on the stage and kind of couldn't find his way through the curtain, and looked a little confused, and the audience was laughing, and then all of a sudden he started hearing that guitar, and
Yeah.
he hit that thing hard, and it rang, and it really rang good, and I like that when a singer plays a guitar that can really get the sound out of it.
Hmm.
He knew how to do that, and then he started singing "Hard Rain's Are Gonna Fall," and I'd never heard that. So what in the heck was that? That was amazing. What a song. And he continued sang Talking Bear Mountain Blues and things from his second record where he did songs, of his own, and just electrified the crowd. And the next time I saw him was at a private party after a benefit for the Cafe Lena in upstate New York near Albany,
Hmm.
and there was a party at the home of a couple that I knew, and everybody went there after the show, and Dylan had been at the show, and I sang a song called "The Circus Song," and Dylan was at the party. Wow! So I said hello, and he said, I really like that circus song you sang. He said, that was the most inspiring song I ever heard, he said.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? And I
Fabulous.
said, are you talking to me? I couldn't believe it. Yeah, and then he kidded me a little and asked me about the song and so on. And he said something to me. He said he liked Harlan Howard as a writer.
Yeah.
He said, try to remember. I guess he could tell because he's just, so brilliant that I did a lot of different things. He said, you have to be consistent and don't lose your audience when you go over the hills and the valleys. Make sure you keep your audience with you because I think you could tell I could take a right turn at any time, and I did. That's what I ended up
Yeah.
doing. But so that's the time. And then another time I saw him on stage at the Bangladesh concert. I was there.
Yeah. Okay.
I was also at Shea Stadium when the Beatles plays there. I saw the Rolling Stones when they came to New York in 1964 at the Academy of Music in Brooklyn. So I saw a lot of things. I was always where the action was. I wanted to
Were
see
you
big
were you
things.
at the Altamont concert in '69?
No, I didn't like big crowds. So I didn't go. I wasn't at Woodstock. I don't like the huge crowds and smelly people. It's not my thing. I like audience somewhere, sit in a chair, watch the thing. I know where
Yeah,
the bathroom is. All that.
yeah. But you did play. You played at Glastonbury, right?
Yeah, but I was on the good side of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I was on the
You were on the other
stage.
side. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You were on the other side.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
where the good food was and all that.
absolutely. Lastly, Don, two questions before I let you go. One, I want to know: are you formally trained in music?
No, I can't read music. I can't write music. I'm just an inventor. I invented American Pie. I invented these songs,
Yeah.
and that's what I do. I know everything comes to me in my head. I'm half Italian and half Scottish, and
Hmm.
one time Pete, who was a musicologist, and his father was a very eminent musicologist at Harvard, um, said, Don, your mother comes from Abruzzi in Italy, and that's where all the beautiful Italian melodies come from.
Hmm.
And he said, and your father comes from the Isle of Iona, and that's where the Scottish poets came from.
Wow.
So he saw me as a genetic accident of some sort.
Last question, Don. If you had to pick five albums that your top five albums of all time, what would it be?
Well, golly, that's a hard one. I've thousands of albums. All right, well, give me a moment here. Um, Top number one album would be the Weavers' reunion at Carnegie Hall, 1963. I was there, and that show changed my life. Um, the second album would be Sinatra Basie,
Mhm.
recorded in 1962, the original album. The third album would be Sergeant Pepper.
Oh yes, okay.
The fourth album would be the Rolling Stones' greatest hits. They had all their hits on it, and it was
Hmm.
an early London record, and everything was on there that they did that I liked, all that stuff. So I'd have that. And the fifth album, that's a tough one. That might be a flamenco record, like the first. Oh, gee, I'm missing Western music. I love cowboy music.
Hmm.
So I don't know, but I know that there would be one Sons of the Pioneers record in
Oh
there,
yes, yeah.
and there'd be a Carlos Montoya album. And it's the first one they did on um, I think it was on RCA. That first one, where he's just there with the guitar. Whoa, what a
Hmm.
record that is! Magnificent. I
Yeah.
saw him at Carnegie Hall. I saw Sabikis at Carnegie Hall. I saw a lot of people. I only regret missing seeing Jimmy Durante.
Hmm.
I was going to go see Jimmy Durante about 1965 in Brooklyn, and I didn't go, and I regret it. He was a great entertainer.
Hmm. Did you ever? Did you see Hendrix play at all? Jimi Hendrix?
No, I did not see Jimi Hendrix. I saw a couple of times. I saw Muddy Waters
Hmm.
and at the Newport Folk Festival, and later on at
Yeah.
a big
Hmm.
club in New York called the Savoy that I played at. It was a Ron Delsner was a major promoter in New York and did all the big shows, and he opened this really nice 1,000-seat nightclub, and Muddy played there, and that was a good show. I remember that.
That's it for this week's episode of Tales from the Road. Tales from the Road is brought to you by the concert photographer and Moving Pictures Media. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you for listening.